Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved. And I've got a guy who's no stranger to our show. He's back, and we're really happy to have him. My old friend, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny, it's great, man. You got your 11th studio album out, right? It's which is called Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 1. And I got to say, I love the cover because it's got a great vehicle on it. And it looks like it's one it's a work in progress. But it's a real car that you have. So can you tell me a bit about that cover?
Yeah. The whole thing, I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a car guy. I mean, guitars and cars are kind of my thing. And, but the car is representative. Like the whole message of the Dirt on My Diamonds is a song on the record. So it's the title track. And, the message is kind of like about, being a diamond in the rough and embracing, our flaws and things like that. The world we live in today, everybody's trying to everybody's in pursuit of this social media perfection, with the filters that make us look more beautiful and more perfect, and the backgrounds that make it look like we're living the good life and all this stuff. And it's like, the flaws are what make us unique and special. And so the car is represents the diamond in the rough, but it's also just my passion for vehicles and how much rock and roll and fast cars go hand in hand. So that's a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda convertible, which was like a bucket list car for me. And the engine we put in it is a 707 horsepower supercharged V8 Hellcat motor from Dodge, and it's being built at my buddy's shop down in Northridge at Picture Car Warehouse there. And a lot of my cars have been built there. So I'm really excited to see that car kind of come together, just as I was excited to see the record come together.
That's great. Now you're based out of Tennessee now, right? You're like outside
Yeah.
of Nashville, and you moved down there with your family. Your wife and you got 6 kids, and you've done so much since the time, Kenny, that you started as a kid and taught yourself how to play guitar. I mean, it's just what an incredible journey it's been. And I just got to say, it's always such a pleasure to see you play and see how certain people had an inspiration, Stevie Ray Vaughan being one of them. But I'll talk to young people all the time, and you're their hero now. You're their guitar influence. Is it a great thing to see how that's come full circle now?
Yeah, it is. It's truly like an honor, because I remember what it was like. I still remember what it's like to look up to those guys that inspired me. It's like I still look up to those people. I still put them on that pedestal. They're so special and so talented. But it's hard to have ever thought of myself as maybe being one of those guys in the future. But when a young person, musician comes up to me and thanks me for my music and tells me that I've been an inspiration to them. I mean, first of all, it kind of blows my mind, because I still feel like I'm the kid sitting on the floor in the living room in Shreveport, Louisiana, just like imagining what it would be like to be a rock star, right? It's like I still feel like that same guy. So it's humbling and flattering and everything in between all at the same time. So it's not lost on me how fortunate I am to be doing all this.
I think it's great. And it goes all the way back to those days in Shreveport. And, your dad, call him Big Ken, he's total, his legend in Shreveport, radio legend there, and always in touch with everything that was going on with rock and roll. But it's amazing because, obviously he was a big inspiration to you. But the fact that you're self-taught is the thing that always blew me away. I thought that was cool when you burst on the scene and you were about 16 years old.
Right. Well, my dad was a massive influence on me. He wasn't a musician, but because he was on the radio, Shotgun Ken Shepherd was his radio name, and but he was, it's like they had a massive music collection. He was the program director, so he's always listening to the station to make sure the playlist was what it was supposed to be, and everybody was doing the job they're supposed to be doing. So we had music around the house 24/7. We had music in the car 24/7. We went to every concert that came through town. We met all the bands that came through town because he always had backstage passes and stuff. And it just exposed me to so many different genres and so much music and kind of the behind the scenes of the touring industry at such a young age. And all of that stuff has influenced, who I am and who I was to become as an artist. So yeah, my dad being who he was and doing what he did certainly kind of set me up in a unique way for what my career was going to end up being.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I see there's so much on this journey that you've taken, and I think it's phenomenal. And yeah, like I said, we met 22 years ago and been friends ever since. But I love on this new record too. Now, the last couple records you worked with an old friend of mine, a coworker, Marshall Altman, who he and I worked together at Columbia Records when I was doing A&R, and he's a really great, smart guy and good producer, songwriter, good recognizer. He recognizes a lot of good talent. Tell me about how you and Marshall got connected and ended up working with him and doing.
Well, Marshall and I, we met through actually my attorney here in Nashville. I kind of put the word out that a few years ago, I was like feeling like, I wanted to kind of get myself out of my comfort zone because, what I've been doing was working really well for a long time and it was still working. Right. But I realized that growth, like in order to have growth, you got to kind of make yourself uncomfortable. You got to put yourself in some uncomfortable situations to get through the other side, and that's where the magic kind of happens. So I wanted to start trying to write some songs with some different people, which can be awkward or uncomfortable at first. I wanted to work with a different producer just to switch things up and to see what would be inspired and what might come from it. So he introduced Marshall and I, and we hit it off right from the bat. We wrote several songs together. He produced, we co-produced the Lay It On Down record. Then we did the last album, The Traveler. And now we've done Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 1 and Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 2, which will be coming out sometime in the next year as well. I just really enjoyed, like, Marshall's he's kind of like a member of the band. He sits in the room with us instead of being in the tracking room. I mean, instead of being in the control room behind the board, he's like in the live room with us in the band, sitting in the middle of the floor, like, hyping everybody up as we're playing. It's almost like he's another unofficial member of the band. It's like, and I like guys that roll their sleeves up and they're like in the trenches with you and they're there from the moment, from the first downbeat to the last,
Yeah, people that are really present for what's going on in the creative process all the way around. Now, there's some great songs on this new record. You sing about half of them, and then Noah Hunt, who's an incredible singer that broke out through playing with you, and that massive hit, of course, Blue on Black, which was one of the biggest songs in rock that year and probably the decade, to be honest, and covered by so many people and loved. I love that you guys still both switch off doing singing. When you're in that creative process, Kenny, you got to tell me, do you, as you're writing, do you decide, this is something I feel like is working well in my vocal range. This sounds like it'd be good for Noah's lower growl. Like, is that how is it as the song's developing? How do you approach that?
Yeah, generally, yeah. Well, we just write the songs, right? So like whatever it is, we're not really thinking of who's going to sing it or whatever. Like in the moment, we're just writing whatever we're inspired to write. And generally, we always write more songs than wind up on the record. So we just write as much material as we can. Once the songs are written, then I'm listening to what we've created. And I'm going, I could really hear Noah on this song, or maybe this one's a little more suited for me. And then sometimes, it still surprises me in the studio because there's been a few instances where, I thought I heard it, his voice on that song, and then ended up that I was the one that ended up singing the song when it was all said and done. And vice versa. I've had songs that I'm like, oh, I'll kill this. And then I go in there and I just can't stand the way I sound on it. And then I'm like, hey, man, why don't you get in here and give it a try? And then he kills it. So what's great is that having two lead vocalists, it took me up to my fourth album before I started feeling comfortable singing lead vocals in my own band. But since I did that, it's been a gradual increase, over the years of me singing more and more. But it's given us two more, two lead vocalists in the band, right? So we can cover our voices are very different. So it actually gives us a broader range of material that we can cover. I mean, you think of bands like Fleetwood Mac, for example. It's like if only one of those guys or girls in Fleetwood Mac sang all the songs, there's a lot of their hits that maybe would have never gone on their records because obviously, the other person's voice was better suited for it. So when you have multiple lead singers in a band, it just opens up a lot more opportunities.
Absolutely. It's certainly like the Eagles, too. You know how, Victim of Love, Don Felder thought he was going to sing it, and then Don Henley ended up doing it. You know how those things happen. But, one of the things that's cool on the new record, too, is you do a cover of Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And you and I both know Davy Johnstone, the great guitarist who played on the original. And, You know, and I've known, where you and me and him are kind of hanging out in the same place, but I always wanted to ask you, did you ever talk to him about some of his guitar style? Because he himself has a very interesting but cool guitar sound that he played on the original Saturday Night So Right for Fighting or The Bitch Is Back or those songs, like the way there's a way that he kind of hits and closes notes. Did you guys ever have that kind of conversation? Because I've seen you hanging out.
Well, I haven't really tried to pick his brain about specifics, but he is part of the reason why we did that song, obviously, because, of our friendship and I really admire him. He's a great human being, right? He's a
Yes.
really great guy, but also like I mean, he's a hell of a guitar player. So, um, that and our appreciation for Elton is why we did the song. But I remember reaching out to him and saying, "Hey man, I'm going to the studio today and I'm gonna cover that song. I hope I don't screw it up too bad. If I do, I might call you and ask you to come play it for me." And thankfully, I feel like I did a decent job of playing it. I don't know. I'm sure he can hear all kinds of little mistakes or little details that I probably missed that I don't realize that he's playing. But I feel like I did a good enough job for it to make the record.
Yeah, and I think I think you brought up the point earlier on is that those imperfections are the things that give it character and are great, right? And it's your
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, he would probably love it. I'm sure by now he's heard it. Hey, one of the things you talked about recently, which blew my mind, I was never aware that Valerie Bertinelli and her family were from Shreveport, where you grew up and, being like a friend of, Wolfgang's and her. I've seen him a lot lately, too, on the road and doing different interviews. But I love this story because, your dad is such a dynamic guy, obviously, and I've always loved him. Tell me about how he kind of like the stories that he was responsible in a way for introducing Eddie and Valerie, if not completely responsible.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? Because for Van Halen fans that are listening in the hometown of Van Halen here in Los Angeles, it's an incredible story. I want them to hear it.
Yeah. Well, so my life and Eddie Van Halen and that whole world, our lives have been intertwined for longer than I even realized, right? Because I first met Ed, and toured with them back in the '90s when they were doing the Van Halen 3 tour with Gary Sharon singing in the band, and we did that entire tour with them, and that's when Eddie and I became really good friends and maintained a friendship all the way up till when he passed away. And we did the entire final Van Halen tour, right? Which was 2015, I think, with David Lee Roth and Wolfgang and Alex. And so we did that entire tour as well. And Ed was just such a great guy, man. I've saved, all like the text messages, because that's how the final tour came together, was just me and him texting back and forth. But anyways, yeah. So like when I was a kid, I had always heard this story. My dad had told me this story, but my dad loves to tell stories. And sometimes my dad's stories take on a life of their own. And so I was never 100% sure that the story was exactly the way he said it was until, I met Valerie's brothers, and they confirmed that this was all legit, right? So I never went and shared this story much of my career. It's only been recently that I've actually talked about it, because they've actually been talking about it as well. I never wanted to share this story. I felt like it's their personal business, it's their lives. And also, I'm just not the kind of guy to try and get attention off somebody else's back.
No,
Right?
you've never been like that, man. You're a really you've got like you've got a high standard. You've always been that way.
Yeah. So anyways, but it's been coming out recently, and it all became very apparent on that last tour as well. But so the Bertinelli family is from my hometown. And back in the '80s, when remember they had the actors strike, similar to kind of what recently happened here
during the
right?
pandemic.
Like the whole no, but just recently the writers and the actors all out in LA were all striking because,
just recently, right? It's just ended recently,
right? So in the '80s, I think a similar thing was happening, right? So all the actors and actresses joined the strike. So I guess she decided, while they were, TV was just airing reruns and they weren't filming any new episodes, she came back to Louisiana to visit her family and spend some time with her family. So I guess they had heard about this new band, Van Halen, and Van Halen happened to be coming through Shreveport to do a concert. Well, I don't know if it was Valerie's dad or if it was one of her brothers, but somebody from their family called my dad because my dad knew their family, and my dad was the hottest radio guy in town, and everybody knew that he had all the connections for concerts and things like that. And they had asked if my dad could take Valerie and her brothers. I'm not sure exactly who all went, but to the Van Halen concert. She really wanted to go. They wanted to go, and basically, my dad take them and be responsible for them because they're all pretty young at the time. My dad was probably pretty young too, but anyway, so he took them. He got them the tickets. He took them. He also got them all backstage passes and took them backstage to go meet the band. And that is the night that Valerie met Eddie Van Halen, and that was like the beginning of their relationship, because then I think the following day or maybe 2 days later, they were playing another show in like Monroe or something nearby, also in the state of Louisiana. And then I think my dad got another call like, hey, Valerie and they want to go to this other show. Can you help them out? Can you take them to this one? And my dad was like, I don't know where this is going, man, but I don't want to be I don't want to be responsible. And then they end up, becoming a couple and getting married. And so when we were on the tour in 2015 and we were doing the last show, we did 2 shows or 3 shows at Hollywood Bowl, Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Van Halen. It was the last one of the shows, and my dad was there. And then we were all saying our goodbyes, and then Wolfgang came up to my dad and he goes, well, I guess I owe you a thank you of some sort. And my dad's like, no, your parents had way more to do with it, than I did, but thank you. And it's his way of acknowledging that, kind of in a roundabout way, if it wasn't for my dad, his parents might not have had him. And so it's kind of cool. I mean, so like, the kid, like my life and their lives have been connected in this way, going back to, when I was just a little kid before I even was playing guitar, and then wound up touring with Van Halen multiple times. And so it's just been, they're a great family. Ed was a really great guy. Like, to me, he was an amazing guy. So nice and so outgoing and so generous with his time and everything. So I just feel grateful to have known those guys and been a part of that.
I think it's fantastic. That's such a great story. You can't beat that. I mean, I love hearing that. So when you go out, I mean, you've got so many great albums now, Kenny, and you've been, doing so many different things. How do you break down a show like the one you're going to be doing in Oxnard and during this tour? I mean, how many songs do you do? Do you do about 14? How long is the set? About an hour and a half?
Well, it depends. Yeah, it depends. It's if there's an opening band or if it's an evening with. If it's an evening with, we usually do, an hour 40 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And the number of songs kind of depends, because we have some songs, we'll start jamming out, dude. We'll do like a slow blues song that might, maybe 8 minutes long before it's all said and done. Or we end the show with Voodoo Child. That's like 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
So the number of songs isn't necessarily maybe as important as like the number of minutes we're actually playing music.
Yeah.
But for this tour, we're going to be trying to obviously feature some songs from the new record, because, we got a lot of radio hits that we've had over the years and platinum records and things like that. But, we're still making new music, and we still want to play the new music for the fans. So, basically I'll just kind of cram some older songs in there that we haven't played on the last tour, and some of the songs off the most recent couple of albums for sure, and just kind of a little bit of everything in between. But it's always high energy, guitar centric, blues and rock and roll.
Yeah, that's the thing I love about it. Before we go, Kenny, and I want to talk about it. So now with having 6 kids, do your children have interest in music? Is it all different depending? Has that trickled down to your children as well?
Yeah, they're all very musical. I haven't seen one of them get to the point yet where they're sitting in, in their room or whatever for hours upon hours like I was. Just woodshedding on an instrument, but that's okay. It's like, their path is their path. And maybe none of them decide to pursue a career in music. I don't know. I just know I'm not trying to force it on them, because nobody forced it on me. I did it because I loved it and I enjoyed it, and it was rewarding for me. So that's why I put in the time. But but we'll see what happens. They're all incredibly musical kids, though. They love music. I hear them singing around the house. I watch them tapping their feet. I see them pick up a guitar and sound things out just like I did when I was a kid. And it comes very naturally to each and every one of them. So we'll see what happens.
That's great. I love hearing that, man. Well, I look forward to seeing you when you come to play. I'm looking forward to the show. It's coming up mid-April. And then when you're back in L.A., we'll have to connect because I always love seeing you, you know. You got a lot of friends back here, of course, that you know that always love to see you when you make your way to town. So,
Yeah, man.
Kenny, it's the best, and really happy about Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 1, and we'll look for Volume 2 next year. But for those listening, check it out. 8 songs, 34 minutes, short, sweet, and to the point. It's got some great songs on it, though. And
all killer, no filler, like they say.
That's the way we like it. And,
You know what I'm saying?
when people talk about the length of an album, I'm like, you know what, man, it's like the albums we grew, when we were younger. You had 2 sides of an album. Sometimes it was 4 songs each side. Sometimes it was 9 songs on an album. Sometimes it was 12. Sometimes it was 7. You just, like, you didn't know. It's all about the quality, not the quantity, as Kenny said before. Kenny, lovely to see you, my brother. Good to see you.
You too.
And we'll see you on the road, okay?
All right,
Thank you
thanks,
so much
man.
for joining us. Kenny Wayne Shepherd, everybody. This is KLOS New and Approved. I'm Matt Pinfield. Thanks so much for watching and listening to us.